TheLazyPeon! Noobs, we've all been one at one point or another, and looking back on our experiences as new players is always something we're able to laugh and joke about. In this video we're going to count the top 10 types of noobs in the World of Warcraft. I've been many of the noobs on this list at some point, and I'm sure you have too. Number 10, the distracted noob. As a new player starting the World of Warcraft, things can get a little bit overwhelming. There's a lot to learn about, especially when you start out. The main thing that distracted me as a new player were the professions. What I'd do is pick 2 professions, level both of them for a while, get bored and pick 2 more. The cycle continued until I tried each profession. Eventually I came to the decision that professions suck and I couldn't be bothered to level them, so I just took skinning and mining to make some gold. Even today I'm still an easily distracted noob. When Warlords of Draenor launched, my goal was to get to max level as quickly as possible, but I found myself spending more time taking screenshots of the new zones rather than questing. Most of the time, being an easily distracted noob is totally harmless. I find you see a lot more of the game and generally have more fun this way, although playing with friends that are easily distracted can sometimes be annoying. For example, the one time I actually tried to level with a real life friend, they'd pick a class, level with me for a few hours, and then try other classes when I was offline, and when I came back, they'd decide to re-roll. This happened a few times and started to annoy me, but in all fairness, I've been guilty of doing the exact same thing. Number 9, the naive noob. As most of you are aware, the internet's a place riddled with trolls and people that want to get a cheap laugh at your expense. World of Warcraft is no different. The naive noobs are generally younger players that are happy to trust pretty much anyone in game. The problem with being naive in a game like WoW is there's actually a lot of people out there that will screw you over if given the chance. I've heard a lot of stories from both real life friends and other WoW players that have actually gotten their account hacked because they trusted another person they met in game to level a character for them. Unfortunately for me, I used to be this kind of noob to some degree. If I ever needed help in game or wanted to know the location of something, I'd often seek the advice of trade chat, which looking back was a really dumb idea. People would send me to all kind of weird and wonderful places and it wasted a lot of my time. I also remember being told that turning my PvP on would give me more XP when leveling, which, needless to say, resulted in many unnecessary corpse runs. The moral of this story is not to trust people in WoW or on the internet. If someone gives you advice, maybe do a quick Google check before taking it, as you may fall victim to trolling. Number 8, the level capped noob. I actually made one of my first machinimas based on this type of noob, and again, like most of the people on this list, I've been this guy at one point. A level capped noob is someone that once hitting max level believes they're a big deal and can take on pretty much anything the game throws at them. These guys are typically unaware of endgame progression and gear having a massive impact on your character's damage, so they'll likely get upset when turned away from raid groups or getting one shot in PvP. Another common trait this noob may carry is a giant ego that will quickly diminish once they realise that getting to max level isn't much of an achievement. I'm sure there's many of you out there that were extremely proud of yourselves once you got your first character to max level, only to be disappointed when you realise that to take part in raids or do well in PvP requires weeks of gearing, practice and learning about your class. Something WoW does really well throughout the leveling experience is hide how much depth there is to the game. I remember thinking to myself once I capped my first character back in Wrath that I'd almost seen all the game had to offer, and once I found out that hitting max level was just the start, I felt a mixture of excitement to find out more about the game and a feeling of sadness that I was still the same totally useless newbie frost mage that I was when leveling. Number 7, the complaining noob. We've all met this guy. He's the person in game that has an opinion on everything, and it's usually a negative one. Typically these noobs are extremely bad at the game, and rather than trying to improve as a player, they instead shift the blame for their own failures on anyone or anything they can think of. Here's some quotes you'll expect to hear from a complaining noob. "Your class is overpowered, I'm lagging, dude I'm getting 1 frame per second, this boss is overtuned, I've killed every boss in the LFR, I've got nothing left to do, WoW's dead, there's no content, my class sucks this patch." The list goes on and on. Now, it's fine to complain about things from time to time, as World of Warcraft is far from perfect, but if you're literally complaining about every aspect of the game, then you're gonna piss people off. No one likes grouping with that guy that just puts everyone on a downer. If there's a problem with the game in terms of balancing, content or bugs, odds are most people already know about it. There's no need to be that guy that just rages all the time and ruins everyone else's fun. You might as well just unsubscribe. Number 6, the auction house noob. Back when I first started playing WoW, I was both fascinated and extremely confused by how the auction house worked. I knew it was the place where people went to make a lot of gold, but I didn't understand how. How did people know what items were worth selling? What price should I set for BOEs when there's none on the auction house? And how come my auctions would never sell? These were all questions I had at one point or another until I eventually put in the time to watch some gold making guides, but before that point I hoarded every single item that dropped in case it was worth a lot of gold, which obviously as a new player questing and killing mobs, it wasn't. I know for certain that there's many noobs out there that have made the same mistake as me here, and when I see low level questing greens on the auction house for over 10,000 gold, that's a sign that we're dealing with someone just like me that has absolutely no idea what they're doing. If you've just started WoW or you're planning on starting it in the near future, I'd highly recommend you stay away from the auction house until you've got a little bit of experience with the game, else you'll just waste a lot of time and potentially spend all your gold on items that will be replaced in a few levels. Number 5. The roleplaying noob. Now when it comes to roleplaying, I myself am a serious noob. I have no idea what to say, I come out of character all the time, and my ideas for a backstory don't make a lot of sense. But there's a lot of people in WoW that take roleplaying seriously and have a lot of fun doing so. And after talking to a few experienced roleplayers, I found out there's a lot of ways to be considered a noob by the roleplaying community, such as the following. Roleplaying as a superhero or someone related to a major lore character, summoning your mount too much, running around too much, mentioning someone's RP story without asking them about it first, addressing someone by their name without asking them first, mentioning someone's class without asking them first, speaking with acronyms, not knowing the lore of your race, doing erotic roleplay out loud and in public, blinking and teleporting, having a bad RP transmog, using a mount that doesn't suit the lore of your race, having a long backstory that's full of holes, having enchanted weapons equipped. Now there's a lot of mistakes you can make as a roleplayer, so it's rather easy to be considered a noob, but if you play on an RP server and consistently make these mistakes, then people will eventually pretend you don't exist and not reply to you in game. You will be ignored and exiled from the RP community on that character. So if you want to be a serious roleplayer, you need to try and be consistent without making too many mistakes. Number 4. The Hunter. Now I know and you know that not everyone that plays a hunter's a noob, just most people that play them are, hence the expression huntard. Hunters are considered the noob class for a few reasons, the first one being it's the most popular class to roll for new players, due to how easy they are to level and play. The second being how annoying they are in dungeons when they leave their pet's taunt ability on and have no idea how to turn it off. The third one being their ability Aspect of the Pack, which when turned on will piss off everyone around you as it slows their movement speed by 70% when hit. The final one being their amazing ability to wipe groups and get away with it without dying. Just misdirect on the healer, pull everything with barrage and feign death. If you're a hunter and you don't abuse your newbie hunter abilities, then good for you. We need a lot more of you guys. Number 3. The PvP noob. Now as a new player to WoW, stepping into PvP for the first time is always daunting and you're generally going to get farmed for honour for quite some time until you learn more about how to play your class. But even at max level in Battlegrounds and Arena, I still see many PvP noobs. A lot of them are even heroic raiders in guilds. From my experience, there's a lot more PvP noobs than there are PvE noobs. This is because throughout the leveling experience you kind of get used to using certain abilities. It's rare you need to use your crowd control, dispel or purge when leveling. So when you start learning to PvP at max level, you'll find yourself needing to make use of abilities that you had previously not used up to that point. I personally still consider myself a noob at PvP. Sure, I can go into a battleground and tear it up, topping the damage, but if you put me in an arena with a 1700 rated team in 3s, then I quickly get overwhelmed with information and make stupid mistakes. PvP is not easy to get good at. It takes a lot of practice and requires you to play differently to how you'd play in PvE, but there's some things that are just obvious signs of a real PvP noob. For example, the guys that fight on the roads in Battlegrounds, the people that get lost when carrying the flag, and the dudes in Alterac Valley that just rush the enemy team's base and stand outside the boss room for 10 minutes. Those guys are the real PvP noobs and we've all been there at one point or another. Number 2. The raiding noob. Raiding's the most popular path of endgame in the World of Warcraft, and many new players that do it for the first time typically experience it on LFR difficulty, which has little to no challenge. This however does nothing to prepare players for the harder modes where there's actually a risk of dying. The raiding noobs are those guys that turn up to raids with no potions, no flasks, no glyphs, the wrong stats on their gear, no idea about any of the boss mechanics and die over and over again to the same thing. The guys that can't be bothered to look up a guide for their spec and would rather spend a night wiping groups rather than spending 10 minutes watching a boss guide. Yes, I've been that guy before, but only for a short period of time. Once I saw how pissed people get after you've wasted their time for long enough, I decided to actually put in the effort to learn how to raid properly, which is something that many raiding noobs never do. One of the most noobiest and stupid things I've ever done in WoW was back in Wrath. With my first raiding guild, I ninja'd a BOE epic sword and sold it on the auction house. I was quickly blacklisted from every guild on the server, which sucked. My advice to any noob raider is to just put in a bit of time to learn your class, keybind your abilities and watch some boss guides. You'll find it actually saves you time in the long run. Number 1. The questing noob. Now, as much as I'm sure a lot of you guys consider questing to be easy, I've met many players who think the exact opposite. The questing noob is a player that has absolutely no sense of direction and can't read a map to save their life. They often struggle to read quest text and rely on quest helper add-ons to help them through even the simplest quest. My younger brother is the biggest questing noob I've ever seen. Despite me showing him countless times the process you go through when figuring out how to do quests, he still can't manage it, and it's incredibly painful to watch. Often when I watch him play, I end up taking over and just finishing the quests he's on. Hopefully one day he'll be able to do it himself. My advice to you questing noobs out there is to learn how to read your bloody map, as most of the information you need can be found there. By default, your map's bound to the M key, so when you're travelling around on your mount, just keep pressing M to make sure you're heading in the right direction. If all else fails, read the quest text or Google search the name of the quest. Those of you who struggle with questing today would have had a really bad time in vanilla, as the UI was extremely basic and you had no choice but to read quest text and figure out what you needed to do by yourself. So just consider yourselves lucky. Now, I love hearing people's stories from when they first started playing WoW, so if you have a noob story you'd like to share with me, then leave it in the comments below or let me know if you've made the same mistakes as me. I hope you enjoyed the video guys, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.